Hey guys, nuggets for your wallet here. We are on a mission of simplifying financial concepts so that you are equipped to make the best decision. Today, the concept that we're going to be simplifying is repo rates, prime rates, and interest rates. You might have heard these terms, but you might not be sure as how are they different and how they affect you. So we have these three different rates and they are used by different institutions and they affect eventually how much the commercial banks charge us when we go to borrow money from them. So before I explain what repo rates, prime rates, and interest rate is, I want to explain how money generally flows. So money is printed out by what we call South African Reserve Banks. And the South African Reserve Bank, after they printed money, they lend money to commercial banks. Commercial banks are your likes of Absa, Standard Bank, Investec, your Capitec. All of those are called commercial banks. So Reserve Bank lends money to commercial banks, and commercial banks lend money to the general public, which is individuals or businesses. So for the Reserve Bank to lend money to commercial bank, they charge them what we call a repo rate. Repo rate stands for repurchase rate. So Reserve Bank charges repo rate to the banks. And the repo rate currently, it stands at 6.25. So when the Reserve Bank decides to increase or decrease repo rates, they are increasing or decreasing the rates that they charge to commercial bank. So if the charge that they charge to commercial bank increase, the commercial bank will also increase the charge that they charge the general public. So firstly, we spoke about repo rates from Reserve Bank to commercial banks. So then once commercial bank have been charged the repo rates, they then add a markup on the repo rate, which is generally a 3.5 markup. And once they add that markup, they then determine what is called a prime lending rate. That is the minimum or the base rate that the commercial bank use to charge when they lend to your general public or to individuals. So they take the repo rate that the Reserve Bank charges to them, they add 3.5% on top of that, and then they use that as a prime lending rate. Currently, the prime rate is sitting at 10.25. So they took the repo rate of 6.75 that is being charged to them by the Reserve Bank, and they added 3.5, and what we call prime lending rates now is 10.25. So prime lending rate, it is the base in which the commercial banks use to calculate now how much they should charge the general public. So commercial banks then say the prime lending rate now is currently sitting at 10.25. Then when you come to borrow money from a commercial bank, the commercial bank assesses your risk. And once they assess the risk, they then say, if, for example, you are a more risky person, they'll say, we will charge, if you want to borrow 100,000 from us, we're going to charge you prime plus 2%. So if they're charging you prime plus 2%, it means that they're going to charge you 10.25 plus 2.5 plus 2%, which means that your interest rate that they will charge to you is what is 12.25. But if your risk as an individual when you're coming to borrow is low, they might even charge you prime minus. Maybe they say prime minus 1%. So if the bank saying, okay, you're a less risky person, the interest that we're going to charge to you is going to be prime minus. It means that they're going to charge you 10%, 10.25% minus 1%, which means then your interest rate that they charge to you is then 9.25%. So these three rates, repo rates is what Reserve Bank charges to commercial banks. Commercial banks then add a markup to determine the prime lending rates, which is the base, in which it's a base for everyone. Then depending on the risk of the organization or the individual, they then add or subtract from the prime rate. And then once they add or subtract, then they determine what is called an interest rate. That's why when you go and borrow from the bank, or you have a credit card, or even from a store, they charge you what is called an interest rate. Interest rate is prime rate plus the risk factor, which is plus or minus from that prime rate. So it's very important for you to understand this, because when the Reserve Bank drops their repo rate, it means that the prime rate drops, it means that the interest that is eventually charged to you, if your interest is prime related, would drop. But if they increase, it means that the prime rate or the rate that is charged to the bank has increased, and it means that the rate that they're going to charge to you would also increase. That is why it is important for you to follow what the Reserve Bank is doing, because it gives you bargaining power. When the prime rate decreases, then you can negotiate better. So I hope this helps to explain what is repo rate, what is prime rate, and eventually what is interest rate. Nugget for your wallet signing out.